Hello, everyone. I'm here with Blake Herrick. He is awesome. He is mostly highbrow vegan and he is doing some amazing things. So I've been really watching him and I've been really inspired by the things that he's doing. Really going to be a big player in the healing space. We need a lot more of this. And I'm just so excited to have met you. You are definitely someone to be on the lookout for because you're going to be doing great things. I know it. You have that in you, you have that drive. So today I just want to get to know you a little bit more because I feel actually honored because I'm doing this now, and then you may not have time for me later on. So, so now is a good time to get this interview in. So, yeah. So I wanted to ask you some questions today, just so everybody gets to know you. So I just want to start with not everyone is drawn to this path or finds their way to this path. So how did you? If you want to start from there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm honored to be on your show as well, Josh. And by the way, like, just for the audience, just so you guys know, like, me and Josh are like homies. We live in the same city. We met up through Tampa Bay Raw Vegans. It's a local group of us raw foodies and vegans and fruitarians. And we meet up like every other week. Organizers of the group, their names are Susie and Kevin. And so because of them, I've had a chance to actually meet people like in real life who are doing the same lifestyle that I was doing. I had only heard about this lifestyle online. And yeah, so like meeting Josh and meeting some other friends here locally has been just a huge blessing in my life. And I just want to speak on your contributions to this movement as well, Josh. Josh is a personal trainer and he reminds me of like myself during my personal training years because like we both care about the actual people. We're not like caring about our sales goals and we're not caring about how long can we string along clients such that they keep on paying us and everything like that. No, we're trying to literally help people help themselves so they can manage their health and fitness on their own. And I always felt like I was like trying to clone myself with my clients. You know what I mean? And I would literally tell my clients like, I'm trying to work myself out of a job, literally. As soon as you can figure this stuff out and, crawl, then walk, then run on your own, then, the sooner the better for me and for you. So then I can have more people that I can work with because I had a full book of business. And, that was when the industry was really cranking, before COVID. But, with myself, with my weight loss journey in high school, where I lost about 100 pounds and then kept it off until now for about 23 years, I always knew that the food and the diet was the biggest piece. They say that abs are made in the kitchen. And, as somebody who naturally carries more body fat, that's kind of my body type. If you believe in that sort of thing, I'm not sure I do anymore after coming into this world because this new knowledge has completely reshaped my belief system. And so we can get more into that as we go. But there are three different body types. You've got ectomorphic, mesomorphic, and endomorphic. And I'm kind of more the traditional endomorphic body type. You can think of like an offensive lineman in football or like a strong man or like, I don't know.
Explain those because I don't know what those.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, if you can imagine like a marathon runner, that would be an ectomorph. Somebody who's really slender. And a mesomorph is somebody who has like a medium build, but they can change their body type pretty rapidly and they respond really well to strength training. They can get down to very thin if they need to do cardio or if they need to, cut weight for a fight, for example. You see a lot of mesomorphs in like the UFC type of deal. But if they want to put on muscle, I mean, it's crazy how fast that they can get gains and like get their physique looking really nice and filled out very quickly. And then, the endomorph, they're going to have like less of like popping muscles, less round muscle bellies. They're going to be, just kind of longer and just generally thicker, but then tend to carry a little bit more body fat naturally on their body. And you can just see, Josh and I are trainers, so we do this day to day, but even for the listeners, you guys can just go walk through the mall. You can, go to the market when you're getting your fresh produce because you guys are, good raw vegans. And you can just see, people have different body types and that's okay. And at a very young age, when I was going through that weight loss experience, I kind of dropped the whole vanity piece of it anyway. I was just happy to feel comfortable in my skin. I was happy to go from about 300 pounds to sub 200 pounds. And that was all I really cared about. There was certain peaks and valleys during that 23-year journey where I wanted to get shredded and I wanted to, get in the best shape of my life and stuff like that. And when I was doing personal training, I definitely achieved that. And I got the chiseled abs and, visible abs in my midsection and, things like that. And I was really fit, right? But the question is was I really healthy? And, that kind of leads me into answering your question because coming out of the tail end of my fitness career, and I went back into corporate America to, take a break from serving others and put a little bit more time into self-discovery and finding out, what's Blake all about? What are my passions? What do I want to pursue in life? And where is this all taking me? How is my journey unfolding? And during that process of shadow work and learning about different subjects like natural law, different esoteric subjects like the 7 Hermetic principles, and just diving deep into different subject matters because I had the time to do it, working this remote corporate job and not, doing crazy sessions and classes with people, from very early in the morning to very late at night. I felt like like a whole new lease on life. And to have that time to be able to spend with myself and have nights alone in my apartment where I'm reading or binge watching content or, doing meditations or just days where I just kind of hang out by myself and do a yoga flow at home, do a jog in the trail behind my apartment and just kind of chill and just kind of collect myself after years of going crazy. And what I found is that, yeah, I was jacked and ripped and shredded during my personal training career, but I wasn't really all that healthy. And those, I guess, transgressions of my past, if you will, started to come out. Some of the adrenal fatigue from too much caffeine and burning the midnight oil that started to show up. Overtraining the body with aches and pains, getting my body acclimated to so much cardio and so much activity that, if I didn't maintain that same volume of training, it would, and also taking into account my body type, like I had mentioned, it started to be easier for me to put on body fat. And yeah, I could still keep up with, my benchmarks that I set for myself in the gym, whether it was like, my bench max or my squat max or my deadlift max. But I noticed that my workouts were taking a lot more energy out of me. And so just to be entirely transparent with the audience, I'm in my late 30s and a lot of people that are even younger than myself, once they approach their late 20s even, or they start to get in their 30s, what do you start hearing? You start hearing, well, I guess I'm getting older. I guess my pants are fitting kind of tight. I got to go up a size in my pants, or I guess what I was saying, I guess my workouts are kind of dragging and getting sluggish. And people kind of, it's like a cultural virus or a disease where people, are using age as a crutch or as a reason or an excuse for their health problems and for gaining weight and feeling lethargic and, a whole host of other problems that I could.
The idea that we go through life and we're supposed to go on the decline, whereas when you find this way of life, it improves over time.
Oh, dude, absolutely. And that's what I was about to find out for myself. And, leading into finding this, there was this whole hero's journey involved. The hero's journey, is the same story that's told in any movie that you can imagine, any novel. You've got your central character, you've got your protagonist, and they have a conundrum. And for me, my conundrum was, man, like, why is it so hard to stay lean, to stay in shape? And why is it taking so much out of me? Because I refused to slip. I refused to allow myself to gain weight. So I found myself that I was just working harder. And I refused to have the excuse that it was age, because my yoga teaching background, I know of these yogis who live hundreds of years and they've got a 6-pack and they're doing, vinyasa yoga or they're doing Bikram yoga or whatever, well into their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and beyond. And so I'm like, okay, so what's really going on here? I was putting that message out into the universe. and when the hero gets an answer or a potential solution to their problem, there's often a situation to where they don't beckon the call to action. They don't heed that call. They kind of ignore it for a little while. And if I'm honest, I didn't necessarily ignore the call to come to the raw food lifestyle and to come to the juicing and the fasting lifestyle, but it took a while for me to adapt. But I did start with fasting in mid 2023. And then in 2024, I was mostly vegetarian and I started really cutting down on my cooked food. And then so when 2025 started, is when I decided, okay, I'm going raw vegan. I'm doing it. And, right before 2025 started, of course, we have the holiday seasons of 2024, Christmas and so forth. And so for Christmas of 2024, I bought myself a juicer and I bought myself all the 32-ounce quart jars. I got like probably maybe 24 of them or something. Like I just set myself up because I had been binge watching these content creators on the raw food lifestyle, whether it was John Rose, Dan McDonald, Robert Morse, Jillian Berry's podcast, Fully Raw Christina, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Misfit Vegan, Eli Martyr, Seth Balin, Josh Hubble, like all the greats. And so my plan was, my birthday's coming up in February. I'm going to do the juice fast after my birthday. That was my plan. But as fate would have it, and just like in the hero's journey, when they do heed the call to action and they embark upon their adventure, kind of like when Frodo leaves the Shire in the Lord of the Rings, there's often some plot twists that happen. And so at the end of January, I was doing yoga in a Bikram yoga studio. And in the beginning of the yoga session, they always say, set your intention. And my intention was like, I just want to help people with this raw food lifestyle. I feel like I've found my niche finally after doing fitness, after doing yoga. And this is what I want to teach. This is what I want to help people do because I'm already starting to feel so amazing. And then I go through the yoga class and there's this one pose that we were doing where it was kind of like a Skandasana pose where I'm putting all of my weight in the squatting position on one foot for the most part. And I felt like a little kind of like a pop in my ankle. And I thought that I had just cracked my ankle, just like you would crack a knuckle or something like that. I get home and before I shower up, I take a walk and my ankle felt a little bit funny, but I didn't think anything of it. The next day, I wake up and my ankle was swollen and it was in such pain that I couldn't walk around my apartment. I was having to hold on to the walls and to hold on to everything. And I remember these tears started to come to my eyes and I didn't know if they were tears of pain or tears of self-pity, but either way, I'm a grown man who's almost 40 years old and I'm about to cry over here. So, looking back to all the work that I had, the pre-work, if you will, that I had put into this lifestyle, meaning the content that I was watching, meaning the books that I was reading, books by Herbert Shelton, books by Arnold Ehret, by Hilton Hotima, the great natural hygiene writers. Some of this natural hygiene material is 200 years old, and it's common sense and it's knowledge that's, we should have been following this whole time, if you ask me. And part of this knowledge states the power of fasting and the power of fasting to heal yourself. So here I am with this messed up ankle and I'm like, okay, I've got the juicer. I've got the jars. You heal faster when you're fasting. Let me give it a try. Even though I wasn't going to do this until after my birthday, let me start my juice fast now, right at the end of January, beginning of February. So that's what I do. I just throw myself right into a juice fast and I kind of figure it out as I go, Josh. And I found out what worked for me in my schedule. And I found out what I didn't like. Some of the super sexy juice recipes that you see online that sound amazing and look amazing on the Instagram as you're scrolling reels, they don't really taste that great in real life, if I'm honest. Some of the combinations of different fruits that you would think would taste really good together don't really taste that great. Some of the mono fruit juices just a straight up orange juice or just a straight up grapefruit juice or just a straight up apple juice. It's the most heavenly divine thing that you would ever taste in your entire life.
Want to say to everyone, if I were looking for someone to detox and cleanse and fast with, I am going to come to you because the amount of care and your energy I would want to work with and the amount of care that you put into, I know you would be a phenomenal mentor. That's why when I approached you, I asked you if you would mentor me. Because so if you guys are looking for a fasting, a detox, or a coach, Blake is your guy.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for that, Josh. And what we decided is that we would co-coach each other because we're homies. We're in the same city. So Josh and I are going to be doing, this is our third podcast together. So we're just going to keep on rocking the content. Josh is a coach as well. Our paths are really, really very similar. And Josh, I think, is more, I guess, I don't want to speak for you, but more so on the high raw vegan foods and the fitness, whereas I'm a little bit more on the juice detoxing. But, other than that, like we share the same exact philosophy, and that the raw, mostly raw, high raw lifestyle with the living foods and the minimally processed foods and the keeping the junk foods out to a minimum, it's going to help you to live your best life.
And I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you end up healing your ankle with the juice fast that you?
Yes, yes. So my ankle was swollen up to where my calf was about the same size of my ankle. It was ridiculous, and it was excruciatingly painful. And I've been very lucky that I've only had a couple injuries in my life. And this is, from football, from wrestling, from growing up around like crashing dirt bikes and four wheelers and all sorts of crazy stuff in martial arts and everything. And so I've been so blessed to only have a couple injuries in my life. And this was one of them. And so I was kind of, I'm not used to that sort of thing. And I was kind of freaked out. Like, how long is this going to take to heal? Am I going to be able to run the same again? Is my ankle going to be kind of like permanently, messed up? Like it was a scary thing. And I start the juice cleanse, and within 3 days, I kid you not, the swelling was completely down and I was walking, and I start doing the walk down the trail, which is, about a half mile, so it's a full mile if I do half mile down, half mile back. And then I start to work myself up to kind of like a jog walk, because it was still pretty painful. I think, I might have snapped one of my tendons, which it's snapped, but my ankle seems to be, working fine. So it healed in miraculous time. And, I'm so blessed for that juice fast. I was going to go 3 weeks, which if you do the math, that would have taken me to, around mid February to like approaching kind of like the late, the teens of February. And my lucky number is actually 23 because I was born on the 23rd. So I was like, all right, a 3-week juice fast is 21 days. Let me just bump it up 2 days and get my lucky number for my first inaugural juice fast, and with my lucky number, and just put, good blessings on it. And throughout that juice fast, some incredible things happened that I didn't expect. Not only did I find a protocol that worked really well for me, meaning what types of juices I was drinking, how much juice I was drinking, the order in which I drank specific juices throughout the day. But, in the beginning of the juice fast, when my ankle was healing, I had a couple number 2 movements that were the food that I had been eating prior, but then the movement stopped. And so I just want to talk about this a little bit, you guys. I won't get too graphic, don't worry, but just hang with me, and then several days go by, right? And then I come to about day 10 of my juice fast, and I start having liquid stools. I'm like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, I guess. I'm drinking juice, kind of makes sense. And then day 11, day 12, day 13, I'm still having these liquid stools, and it's starting to become very uncomfortable, actually. Like to the point where like I'm at risk of maybe like having an accident or something. I don't know how to say that. Like I didn't want to go out in public even, like I was just like, again, I'm like, I'm a grown man here. Come on. Like I'm going to quit, I'm going to quit this fast. This is ridiculous. But I had one plan B. It was almost like I don't know, like a Hail Mary plan that I really didn't want to do. And that, when you come into the world of juice fasting, you start to learn about these supplements people take that help to clean out your digestive tract. And there's a phenomenon that's well known in juice fasting called mucoid plaque. And this is residue, whether it's inside the tissues, whether it's coating the digestive tract itself. There's kind of a debate about that, of what it is, but it's entirely real. That's what's not debatable at all, that you have stuck stuff inside your digestive tract, and that stuff can start to rot, putrefy, rancidify, and ferment inside your body. And that's going to cause bacterial overgrowths, fungus overgrowths, and that whole festering mess is going to make your body more acidic, more toxic. And that, as some of the natural hygienist people and the naturopathic doctors would say, is the underlying cause to most health problems. And so, I never really thought that any of that sort of phenomenon was going to happen to me. It was only my first juice fast, but here I am. I don't want to have liquid stools anymore. I've got these supplements, and the supplements are psyllium husk, which is like a fibrous, sweeping sort of supplement. And then you've got bentonite clay, which is a kind of like a binder, and it gives something more, I guess, volume and something for the peristalsis motion of your intestines to kind of start to move out. So I'm like, all right, let me just try the supplement and see if it stops the liquid stools. And this is around day 14, day 13, I want to say. The next day, no liquid stools. I'm like, hallelujah, holy buckets. The next day after that, throughout the fast, as you guys know, my ankle was, a bit banged up. And besides, I was trying to take this fast very professionally and very seriously. And part of the advice when you're fasting is to kind of curtail your physical activity a little bit. And so all I would really do would be walks, and some of that, trying to rehab my ankle, walk, jog type of thing. But what I would really enjoy doing every day would be this breath work and sun salutation routine that I do in the morning. And at the end of that, I would lay down and have a little savasana, which is where you just lay down on the yoga mat. And that day, I just remember I'm in my meditation during savasana, and it's just kind of like silence. And I got the sensation of rice. And it's kind of hard to describe, but imagine you just ate a bowl of rice, and it was a satiating, nice meal, and it just feels nice and warm and good in your tummy. That's kind of just the sensation I got. And I remember being in my meditation, just like, okay, that was a weird sensation that I just got, this, random rice feeling in my, in my midsection. And then I kind of felt a bit of a gurgling. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, I think I have to go number 2. Here we go again with the liquid stools. Oh my God, is it never going to end? Is it day 23 yet? I think I'm actually going to quit. And knowing that I never would anyway, I would just suffer with the liquid stools. But, as fate would have it, I wouldn't have that problem. I go to the bathroom and I have a number 2, and it wasn't a liquid stool. You can feel the difference. And I get up off the toilet. I kind of clean myself up a little bit with the tissue, and I look down and I'm like, yo, what the heck is that? I had done my research and I knew what this mucoid plaque looked like in the pictures online. And when I looked in the toilet and I saw what was there, that was it. This dark, squiggly, ropey, slimy looking gross stool. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. That is incredible. And I'm a bit of a scientist. I'm an analyst is my day job. So I like to analyze things. So of course, I go to the kitchen and I get a spatula that I'm never going to use again when I cook for people or when I prepare food for people. So don't worry. And I take the spatula, I kind of like lift the stuff out. And if you look online and you Google mucoid plaque, you can see that it literally hangs over people's whatever stick they're using to pull it out of the toilet, because it's this rubbery, gross substance. And that's what happened. And I have pictures of all of this. And I always say, if people are watching this show right now and they're calling BS on me, just DM me and I'll send you a picture. And I have plenty. And when I lifted it out of the water, I could actually smell how disgusting and putrid it actually was. When it's in the water, maybe you don't smell it as strongly. When it's in the air, oh boy, it was not cool at all. But what happened is in that exact moment, a switch clicked in my brain that, oh my God, that stuff was inside me. I did that to myself. Was that the rice that I had been eating as one of my taper down vegetarian foods throughout 2024? Probably, because the hygienic material states that animal products and cooked starches are probably the worst besides, cooked food and oil and stuff like that in terms of creating this sludge that gets stuck inside of you.
Question for you: is rice healthy?
Yes. Okay. Even though I just shared with you guys the story about the rice and sensing the rice and then passing the mucoid plaque and then feeling like that mucoid plaque may have been constructed with the remnants of the rice that I had been eating as I was, transitioning through vegetarianism over 2024 before I went raw in 2025, I would still advocate rice as a great transition food towards veganism, vegetarianism, and especially this raw food lifestyle. Now, I'll give you guys a couple tips that I used that really helped me, as a personal trainer. And I saw what people eat, like so much bread and pasta. And I'm like, man, it's not just the bread and the pasta, but it's what goes on it. The butter, the cream sauce, the salt, the oil. If you just have steamed rice, it's really not all that bad. But I would recommend, one, that you use a rice cooker just for ease. And also that before you cook the rice, that you rinse it off really well with hot water. And you'll see in the water, as you're rinsing it, that the water, it starts to look milky and get kind of like a thick, milky sort of appearance. And then you pour that water out, rinse it again, pour it out. But what you're doing is you're rinsing off some of the volatile starches that are going to be causing that glycemic bump in your blood sugar. And so in my own journey, I use rice, as my staple carbohydrate besides steamed or baked potatoes for 23 years after my weight loss experience in high school. And I thought it was, a great substitute for some of the other carbs that people liked, the pastas, the breads. And I saw, really good results when my clients would switch over to that. So yeah, I think rice is a great food. It's a great transition food. Now, what I would recommend even rice though would be like lentils. I think lentils are probably the best sort of carb slash protein that's less starchy than rice. It's not going to create the mucoid plaque, and you actually ended up developing a taste for it. And now I find lentils to be just almost addicting. They're so tasty. So that would be my recommendation now.
Okay. I want to talk about some things that I have to admit I'm interested in myself, but I think people who are watching this would really want to know about any profound experiences while you were fasting, while you were eating raw only. Um, any shifts in the body or the spirit or things that you went through, increased energy or maybe changes in your libido, or for guys, any types of anything that you would consider that maybe mainstream medicine would say isn't possible, or any type of maybe aha moments or spiritual experiences, anything like that?
Oh, dude, yes, that's a great question, Josh. And I'm glad you asked that because, I mentioned earlier that having dealt with obesity at a young age and then losing 100 pounds and then just feeling good to be in my own skin and to have clothes that fit and to look not like the fat guy. No offense to obese people, but it feels so good once you kind of like get back into that normal average, build. So I never really cared too much about the aesthetics and, but what I found, and kind of to tie back my story from earlier of how my workouts were starting to get kind of sluggish, and then I find this natural hygiene material that talks about, okay, if you eat clean foods like a high raw vegan diet, and if you do fasting to detox your body, then you're going to perpetually get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And the only reason for aging really is that toxicity inside your body from eating the wrong things and from not moving your body. And they talk about a couple other things like sunlight and fresh water, fresh air. So I started adapting this lifestyle. I go through that first juice fast. And after that first day of releasing mucoid plaque, for every day for about a week after, every day, I would release more and more and more. And subsequently, I would end up doing another juice fast, releasing more mucoid plaque to the point where I think I got the bulk of it out. And that's where my journey turned another corner and I got deeper into cleaning my tissues themselves. But we can talk about that later. But throughout that first juice fast, and then after that, and then coming into my second juice fast, I only started in the beginning of 2025, and it's only been 9 months. It's a short amount of time, but I did have profound results. What I noticed is that I got my energy back, and it was like a miracle. I could do these workouts and not feel like I was totally zapped afterwards. By changing what I ate, I was starting to lose body fat and staying lean, which was like my arch nemesis for over 2 decades. It started to be very, very, very easy. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, over this past weekend, I kind of had like a little bit more calories than I would usually have. And I'm still pretty lean, for my build. And in fact, I think some of it, kind of went to my muscle mass. So that in itself was just a blessing, to have the energy back, to have to be able to stay lean easier. And this is coming from a guy who's not really even caring too much about the vanity side of things. But I'm not going to lie to you, it is nice. It is a nice feeling. But I say that in that sort of context because what I found to be even more profound and even more like rewarding were some of the energetic changes that were happening. There was an overall pleasantness that started to wash over my aura and wash over my energy. The certain impatience, I guess impatience was the main thing. It just started to just melt away. I didn't get annoyed by things as easily. And this is after already being, 38 and turning 39, this year, and having done a lot of work on myself, a lot of yoga, a lot of meditation. So I thought I was already a pretty chill dude, so to even feel that, like, that state of bliss that's like never ending, that was something that I could palpably feel in my life. And that's all well and great, right? That I just, I kind of feel high on life all the time. But when you feel that way inside of yourself and about yourself, certain other external factors of your life are inevitably going to change as well. So one of the things that happened is I took a leap of faith and I went to the Tampa Bay Raw Vegan meetup. And I met you, man. And this has been one of the coolest friendships. And some of the, we're also co-workers in a sense. We're comrades, and we're fighting the same fight. We're in the same army. You know what I mean? Like, I have a brother in arms. What a reward.
It shouldn't be a fight, but it is,
I
because
know.
this planet on is run by, dark forces that are, anyway. But yeah, it's one thing I want people to know, and that you're a living example of. So I'm so honored to know you, because there's so much suffering and so much people are married to conflict. Do you know what I mean? I say that.
Yes.
And it's like you said in the beginning when you were talking about how people start talking about their age. Oh, well, I'm feeling this. I'm sick with this because I'm this old. They're married to conflict. And I just want, more than anything, I just want to give this away freely to people, is that there's another way. And what we've been taught to believe isn't necessarily the reality of what we are supposed to be, what the Creator made us be. And there's a way for us to as we age and as we go up in age, to thrive and to live long years and to be able to do things that we never thought we could do and not be sick, and actually eliminate, if we're sick right now, to reverse that illness. And some people just don't believe. I feel so bad. They're trapped in this despair and this. So how do we get people to break free from that?
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. And I think that that's why you and I do what we do, is because we've felt that despair. We've been on the other side of the coin, and we transformed, by the grace of God and by the help of, whether you call it angels or different allies coming in, different creators we come across on the internet or different friends that we meet. Sometimes I feel like I couldn't have done it without any sort of divine intervention, to be honest. But nonetheless, our lives have fundamentally done a 180, probably like whatever a 360 plus 180 is, probably like a 540. Like we're just doing a 1080 around here. Like, we're changing our lives like so fundamentally, and to where I kind of don't even recognize old Blake anymore. But what I will tell you, the person that I do recognize now is Kid Blake, the little happy-go-lucky dude who wanted to share all his toys with everybody, who wanted to also spend time alone in his room and play his guitar and read his books. I'm the adult version of that now, because what I've done is I've unraveled I won't say all, I'm going to be humble here, a good chunk of society's programming on me, and carrying around the guilt, the shame, the ego, needing to be this Blake character. Now I'm just doing naturally what I feel like I want to do, and things are working out great for me. But we can't rely solely on divine intervention in our life. We have to put that energy out into the atmosphere, and then the universe is going to reciprocate. So how do you do that? You've got to start making some small, incremental, fundamental changes. And if you work with a coach, you might get a good second opinion on what the biggest ROI changes for the least amount of effort are going to be. Like if I can, like here, I'll give you like the most stupid example in the world. There's this pasta stuff. It's called Pasta Zero. It's made out of shirataki, which is like I believe a seaweed flour or something like that. And it has 0 calories. And there's other low calorie pastas that aren't made with wheat as well, like chickpea and quinoa. What if they eat pasta a lot? And I just tell them, why don't you use one of these pasta substitutes, and you're going to save, like, let's do the math here, 3,500 calories a week. That's a pound. That's a pound of body fat that you're losing a week just by changing just by changing the type of pasta you're using. So even though that might sound like a silly, analogy or a silly example, little changes like that add up. And then you make more changes. You're like, okay, well, I'm drinking all this soda, let's take the plunge. Let's have a sugar-free, like stevia sweetened carbonated water or something like that. I had a client who would drink these Zevias. She had switched from Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all that to these Zevia 0-calorie natural sodas. Do I recommend that you just go start drinking those things if you're not drinking them? Well, no, I don't. Yeah. But if you're drinking Coca-Cola and Pepsi, yes, taper down. And then that's now opening up a future where you're now drinking water with lemon squeezed in it or something like that. And you just start tapering down. You're like, oh my God, easy for you to say, right, Blake? Look at you. Well, that's where the universe comes in, and you're going to start feeling better. So you don't need any sort of willpower after a certain amount of time. It becomes a self-fulfilling, perpetual energy sensation to where you don't need any motivation to keep doing what you're doing, because you start to feel so good that's the only gratification and results that you need in the beginning. And then after a little while, the physical results are going to be even more mind-boggling, because after probably about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, you're really going to start to see some physical changes. If you're sedentary, just go for a walk around the neighborhood. A lot of people have animals. Take your dog for a longer walk. It's going to benefit both you and the dog. If you're scared of the gym, don't get a personal trainer. Oops, I said don't get a personal trainer. Me and Josh are trainers. Why in the heck would I say that? Well, if you're scared of the gym, maybe just start doing some group exercise classes to ease yourself into it, okay? Because you're going to be surrounded by a community of people off the bat who have each other's back, and these classes are fun. It's going to get you inspired, and then it's going to give you the opportunity to meet some of the personal trainers, so you don't just choose one who's coming at you with the sales, that you choose a personal trainer that you really resonate with, and you take a little time to vet them before you just sign up for sessions. So there's a smart way to navigate the whole beginning process of your journey. And when you're going more towards the vegan side of the diet, after you've kind of figured out the fundamentals, Josh, I think that's where you're a really big expert on that process, and you have some really good feedback that I would recommend people talk to you about that.
Yeah. We'll do another one on that. For for men out there, there's lots of, I feel as though more men struggle with body image issues than we know about. When you were overweight, I don't know if that was from overeating or if you had eating addiction issues. I don't know where that came from, or if you were just naturally overweight. How has that process unraveled for you? I know you've been touching on it, but I wanted to focus on that because there's so many people struggling with that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. Um, I'm the rare person who was really, really big and then lost weight, and then now I look pretty much like I've always looked like this. If I tell people that I used to be really overweight, a lot of times they don't believe me. And then I'll lift up my shirt and I've got a tiny bit of loose skin from those days. So I'll be like, "Hey, so then where did this come from?" They're like, "Oh, no way. He's not BSing me. He really did lose 100 pounds and he lost a bunch of weight and now he looks like that." But people, they don't think that I began that way. But because I was larger to begin with, and to kind of answer your question, it was comfort eating for the most part. There was a lot of stress in my family and stuff. And also, I was bullied a little bit because my complexion was kind of different and my hair was a lot more red and I was a lot more freckly. And I was like kind of the only redhead and I was like just bigger than everybody. So I think I got kind of heckled a little bit too. And I comfort ate because of that for sure. But after the weight loss, one of the benefits of having been larger before is I carried down muscle mass to this size, to this weight that, it was, I guess, one of the hidden blessings. And that's why I said in the beginning of this little talk here is that most people are wanting to put on size. Most people are wanting to put on muscle. They look in the mirror and they think that they're too thin or they don't look masculine enough. For me, I was thinking that I looked fat and disgusting and not sexually desirable to women because it seemed like the girls wanted the skinny dude, like with the abs and the six pack and stuff. But granted, that was in high school and things kind of changed. There's a lot of women who like all different body types of men. So my advice on this whole subject, I'll give you guys another kind of crazy analogy, and I think it'll make something click in your brain. My favorite sport is actually martial arts. And one of the main reasons for martial arts is because it's the great leveling of weights, because they have weight classes. It's not just like who has the biggest players or the tallest players in basketball, or the biggest, tallest defenseman in hockey, or the hugest, most vicious defensive line in football or whatever. It's no. If you need to make your weight, or you're disqualified, or you have to pay a penalty out of your purse. So I love that about martial arts. And the reason why I bring up this example is because what those athletes have to do is they have to maximize what God gave them. They have to use the tools that God gave them in their physique, and then they put the work in, and then you see these athletes on the scales flexing their muscles and they're all ripped and shredded. If you look at them and then you look at a tribe of people in the Amazon jungle, or in Australia or Africa, or wherever there's still kind of like a tribal population, it looks exactly like that, does it not? Their physiques look exactly the same as a human being who's naturally, moving around, doing the work that we were designed to do as humans, hunter gatherer kind of thing, but minus the hunter. So that's what I think natural physiques should be, just kind of lean, strong, and maximizing your own genetics. I'm strongly against doing any sort of exogenous hormones, or just overdoing the creatine, overdoing the protein, or going down that science trap where it's like study after study after study. And I think that there's a lot of nefarious influence in those studies. And that's why I kind of take them with a grain of salt. So my advice, just to give you guys a short synopsis of all of that, is I hope you put that together and it clicked in your mind that you should just be maximizing what God gave you. You should be maximizing your own physique. You should be active. You should eat healthy, get your steps in, do some sort of cardio, do some sort of strength training, do some sort of flexibility work. I love yoga. Doesn't have to be yoga if that's not your thing, but do some active recovery and some foam rolling and just work that as a part of your lifestyle. And then your genetics will respond. There's, I guess you could call it a science called epigenetics, where if you give good inputs to your body, such as we mentioned with the healthy diet, sun, air, water, exercise, community, happiness, love, sharing, giving your gift, giving your service to the world, that your genes are going to be maximized. You're going to be living your life to the fullest, like very literally. And just to accept, just like I had to accept my loose skin, I had to accept my red hair and freckles. I had to accept that I'm not going to be this person who's like super, super shredded naturally, no matter what they eat. But I've learned to love myself just exactly the way that I am. And it's so freeing. It's so liberating because now I can just do what I want. Today, I did a bike ride and some yoga. I didn't have to do some crazy workout. It was fun. It was nice. Tomorrow I'm going to do calisthenics and some breath work and sun salutations and maybe like play around with handstands and stuff. And then I'm going to take the weekend mostly off. I'll probably do a beach run on Saturday or Sunday. So you guys, I'm so easy on myself now. And the counterintuitive thing is with this lifestyle, and especially with the high raw and the raw food lifestyle, you can get away with that and still maximize your own genetics to where you look like kind of like one of these MMA fighters, or kind of like you would if you were, in your tribal state.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Somebody was starting out on this lifestyle, this path, and they are not sure what to do, not sure where to start. Where would they, if they're watching this and they're thinking they need a change and they're feeling like they need something new, and this might be the thing for them. How would they start and where should they go?
Yeah, find a mentor. And I'll tie this back to the hero's journey. When you enter that unknown phase where you're like, you heed the call to action and you're like, all right, fine. I'm not going to ignore this problem anymore. I'm going to address this problem now. And I'm going to start taking action towards my ideal future. That part of the hero's journey is where I broke my ankle and, certain plot twists happen. But another sort of cool thing that happens at that stage of your journey is you meet a mentor. That's when Bilbo met Gandalf. That's when Neo met Morpheus. And so for me, some of my first mentors in this raw food realm were all those influencers that I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Your Dr. Morse, Dan McDonald, John Rose, Fully Raw Christina, Jillian Berry, all kind of like the bigger names. And then Eli Martyr was another one. Seth Balin was another one. Prof. Spira is another one. And so I started to just binge watch all these people, and certain days I would gravitate towards one or the other. If I burnt myself off from completely binge watching, Dr. Morse for like days straight, then I would kind of switch over to Professor Spira or, go back to Dan McDonald or whatever. But working with a mentor is somebody who's where you want to be and then mirroring what they do, somebody that you resonate with. That's how I did it. That's how I've always done it. But I've always been kind of like autodidactic, meaning I like to teach myself things. So, I never really hired a coach or anything like that. I already was a personal trainer, health coach, yoga instructor, and everything like that. And a bit stubborn if I'm honest. So I took I took this on myself. I took the challenge on myself. Had I hired a coach, perhaps it would have been a different outcome. So I would say, even if you don't think you have the money for that, still reach out to Josh, reach out to me and see if we can help you. I had my buddy Alan reach out to me, about some coaching, and my prices aren't like super cheap, but I do have a very low cost option. My community, it's called Raw Food Lifestyle. It's only $17 a month. We worked out kind of a deal to where I gave him some tips and tricks on how to do a juice fast. And we're going to be doing some content together because he's a professional volleyball player in Canada and he's done water fasting, dry fasting. So we're going to do some podcasts together. And so, you know, there's all like, I'm here to help. And like Josh said earlier, like we're doing this for free. I mean, this is our Thursday night. We got to go to work tomorrow. I'm not making any big YouTube AdSense from doing this. I'm doing this from my heart. I've got a big heart and I want to share. So you're not alone. Just start taking small steps and they add up over time, and just rely and lean on a mentor, whether it's a virtual mentor from binge watching their content on YouTube, or if you just start a conversation with myself, with someone like Josh. And even I've reached out to some people that I want to have on my podcast, and I was kind of nervous, like, oh my gosh, like, they're probably going to say no or whatever. I didn't think that, but I was like, oh, what if they say no? Or like, oh man, should I really be reaching out to them? You know what I'm saying? But they've just all been so freaking nice. That's what I've noticed about this, I guess, about this niche, Josh, is that everyone's so freaking nice and we all just want to help each other succeed. And do you think that that's a coincidence that it's the same people that feel that way and move that way and act that way and help each other? And those are the same amount of people that have put a ton of work in their own selves and maybe cleared out some of those toxins and some of those demons, and maybe learned from some of their mistakes over time, and have had not only the physical results, but some of those mental, emotional results that we were talking about earlier. And I think that there's no coincidences. And so this has just been such a welcoming space to be involved in. So you guys, I hope that you feel the same way and never ever feel like you're alone in your battle, because people have your back and I have your back 100%. Just DM me, test me on that, try me. If you DM me, I'm going to respond, guaranteed.
Thank you, Blake. And speaking of that, how can people get in touch with you or find you?
Yeah, it's just my first and my last name for YouTube and for Instagram. Pretty easy. If you look at like some of my content, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram at Blake Herrick, you'll see that my website is rawfood.lifestyle. And that's also the name of my community, is Raw Food Lifestyle. That's the name of my podcast. And so that's kind of like the brand name of my offerings, because I always taught when I was a personal trainer, yoga instructor. I've been technically a personal trainer for over 15 years now, if you count when I first got certified in 2010. So, but I've always taught that you need to integrate these practices into your lifestyle. So that's why I chose that brand name. And like we talked about, that abs are made in the kitchen, and that I've had such a profound transformation at the age of 38 and 39. Never thought in a million years this would happen to me, that I found the raw foods and felt in my own body, in my own mind and heart, the impact and the results that this way of eating has given me. So that's why I chose raw food, raw food lifestyle. And that's just what I'm repping. So you can go to rawfood.lifestyle, and that's where you can join my community and book coaching. And just a quick heads up on that, I'm going to be launching for Black Friday coming up here in just about a month. I'm going to be launching a juice fasting course, which is kind of like my mid-tier option. And we're going to be going live with that in the new year. If you guys want to hop on a juice fast, don't wait till the new year if you don't want to, but the pre-sale for that starts Black Friday. You're going to get like half off. It's going to be an awesome deal. And then starting January 1st, we're all going to start doing a juice fast together. I'm going to be doing the juice fast with everyone, and I'll only be running these juice fasting cohorts a couple times a year. So it should be really fun. If you don't do it, you'll still be able to get my course throughout the year whenever you want, but it's just that I won't be doing it with you, but you can still do the course whenever you want.
That's really exciting. I know people who need that. So I'm going to be looking for people to send you, because there's so many people who would benefit from that. So I'm so glad that you have that offering, that you're offering people. So wonderful. Yeah. I just wanted to thank you so much for this interview. It was profoundly, I learned a lot. It was profound. I learned a lot. And it was, someone's personal experience of what they went through is invaluable. And I learned a lot. And I hope that the audience learned a lot. So, Blake, thank you so much. I know we're going to do more of these. So it's not like, we're going to have different topics. We're going to come up with like a name, like everything's going to change. But yeah, thank you so much. And I know I like to lean in when I talk, but I'm so like focused. I feel
I love
like
you, man.
I'm like old
Dude.
school talking to like an old phone. Hello, can you hear me?
No, I do the same thing, and I feel that love, and I just reciprocate it back to you, Josh. I love you, man, and we're gonna be doing a lot of content together, and we're just gonna be putting out so much good stuff for people. And this movement, it's already kind of like it's like at the point of the bell curve or the parabolic curve where we're just picking up steam. So, I'm excited to where this is going. And yeah, like thank you for having me on your show, brother.
Thanks for creating the space. So, all right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.